Imagine walking into a family home, not your own, obviously, but a friend's or maybe a partner's family home for the very first time.
Right.
You step through that front door, and immediately, before anyone even takes your coat or says a single word of greeting, you feel what I can really only describe as the weather of the house.
Oh, wow, yes. The weather. That is such a vivid way to put it.
You probably know that exact feeling, right?
Yeah.
It's the unspoken rules just hanging there in the hallway. It's
Hmm.
the heavy silences that drop over the living room for no apparent reason. It's those strange, super specific rituals everyone in that family follows, but nobody ever stops to actually explain to an outsider.
Exactly.
As a guest, you just sort of feel the atmospheric pressure of their shared history pressing against you.
It's a universal experience, really. I mean, every single family operates within its own microclimate.
Yeah.
And that climate is entirely dictated by what previous generations have lived through.
Yeah.
When you walk into someone else's house, you are quite literally breathing in their past without even realizing it.
And that feeling, that invisible atmospheric pressure, is the perfect entry point for our deep dive today.
It really is.
Because we are exploring an incredibly moving, just profoundly layered text today. It's titled All the Names the Water Kept by Augustine Prostrassen.
An absolutely stunning piece of work.
It is. And our mission today is to look at this text and really examine how things like trauma, memory, and silence aren't just, abstract psychological concepts.
Right, they are just ideas.
Exactly. They are physically carried through generations. They change how we move our hands, how we eat our meals, how we arrange our furniture.
And it's a text that really demands your attention specifically because it makes those invisible forces so intensely visible.
Mm-hmm.
The narrative is guided by a woman named Solenne who is looking back at her childhood in a small French town called Sainte-Mère.
Yeah, she's our lens for all of this.
Right. And through her memories, we get this incredible masterclass in how a family's completely mundane, everyday objects, things as simple as a stained tablecloth or an empty chair at the dinner table, can secretly hold the weight of entire lost worlds.
Celine describes growing up around her family as breathing the humidity of survival.
Yes, that phrase.
That phrasing really stuck with me because when you grow up around survivors, you don't actually know that other houses have different weather.
No, you wouldn't.
That humidity is just all you've ever known.
Which is why trauma functions so much like a weather system.
Mm.
It acts as this invisible pressure pushing down on a family.
Yeah.
It dictates behavior in ways that seem entirely irrational or even eccentric to an outside observer.
Like weird family quirks.
Exactly. But from the inside, those behaviors make perfect, heartbreaking sense.
Mm.
I mean, it's the reason a family might flinch at certain sounds, or why a father might habitually duck under a doorframe that he's clearly short enough to walk through normally. He is physically minimizing his own body to accommodate the enormity of the invisible weight he's carrying.
Okay, let's unpack this because I want to start with that father figure, Theodore.
Oh, Theodore, yes.
Prostrassen gives us some really specific details about his daily life. What does Theodore actually do for a living, and how does that reflect the weather he's carrying?
So Theodore works at a glass factory in a neighboring town. And every single day, his literal occupation involves taking something solid, granular, and completely opaque sand and applying intense, violent heat to force it into transparency.
He makes the opaque transparent.
Exactly. His entire professional life is dedicated to making things you can see through. He creates clarity.
Right.
But the stark contrast is that on Sundays, this man who makes the physical world transparent completely disappears into his own opaque, impenetrable grief.
So his coping mechanism is this obsession with visibility at work, but total isolation at home.
Yes.
Where does he go when he disappears on those Sundays?
He leaves the house early in the morning to walk the dry bed of what the locals in Sainte-Mère call the left-turning river.
The left-turning river.
Right, and the geographical context here is vital to understanding him. Back in 1923, the main river in the town suddenly changed course.
Just naturally.
Yeah. As Celine's grandmother poetically puts it, the river wasn't misbehaving, it was just remembering an older path. It turned left.
Okay.
But then we fast forward to August of 1952. Theodore is just 13 years old, and he's out with his older brother Marc. And Marc drowns in that left-turning river.
And Theodore was right there on the bank when it happened.
He was.
But it wasn't just that he witnessed it. There's a physical memory attached to that moment, isn't there?
Yes. This is crucial. Theodore reached his hand out into the rushing water to pull his brother back to the bank.
Right.
But the water was so incredibly, shockingly cold that his 13-year-old nervous system panicked. His body instinctively told him to pull back from the freezing temperature.
A pure biological reflex.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he pulled his hand back, Marc was taken by the current, and vanished.
God.
And because of that split-second biological reaction, Theodore has carried that literal, physical cold in the palm of his hand for the next 40 years.
That is just devastating.
It is. He walks the dry riverbed every Sunday just to keep the exiled water company, constantly listening for the brother he couldn't hold on to.
That brings up a really striking description in the text about how the father remembers the actual event. How does he describe the act of drowning?
What's fascinating here is how Prestruyson subverts our expectations of panic.
Right, usually you think of thrashing and screaming.
Exactly. But when Solene's father finally speaks about the incident decades later, he says drowning isn't a thrashing scream. He calls it the quietest loud thing.
The quietest loud thing.
Yes. It's that horrifying silent transition where a human being stops being a swimmer and simply becomes an object carried by the water. And Theodore's own silence throughout Solenne's childhood, his high, quiet voice that spreads through the hallways like thin smoke, is entirely born from witnessing that quietest loud thing.
So the father's response to loss is to wander the geography of where it happened. It's very outward.
Very outward, yes.
Does the mother, Elodie, share that specific type of outward-facing grief?
Actually, it manifests completely differently in her. Where Theodore obsesses over the physical absence outdoors, Elodie obsesses over preservation inside the home.
Right, the interior space.
Her entire Sunday revolves around a very specific, almost theatrical ritual with a tablecloth.
Yes. Let's talk about that tablecloth, because Solenne describes it as smelling of lavender, but also something underneath the lavender.
Something mineral.
Yeah, something mineral and ancient. And when the mother unfolds it, she holds it by two corners and lets it snap open in the air between her arms.
It's a very deliberate motion.
It floats there like a ship's sail, or maybe a white flag of surrender, before it finally settles down onto the wood.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture of memory, Solenne realizes as she gets older that this tablecloth isn't just a piece of domestic fabric.
Yeah.
It's been washed so many thousands of times that it's become nearly translucent. It has become a collaboration between the physical thread and the emptiness where the thread is worn away.
And the emptiness is actually doing most of the work.
Exactly. When that specific cloth settles on the table, it doesn't just change the furniture, it changes the room's tense.
Oh, I love that. It pulls the entire kitchen into the past perfect tense.
Precisely. It turns the kitchen into the country of having been. The moment that fabric touches the table, the family is suddenly eating their Sunday meal with every ghost who has ever rested their elbows on that cloth.
And sitting at that table, eating on that translucent cloth, is Grandmother Luce.
Yes, Luce.
Solenne pays a lot of attention to her grandmother's quirks. What kind of survival mechanisms does Luce display at the dinner table?
Grandmother Luce is just a walking masterclass in trauma responses that have solidified into personality traits. For instance, she walks with a wooden cane that she doesn't medically need. She uses it entirely to control the pace of interactions, tapping it to dictate the rhythm of the room.
She controls the tempo.
Exactly. And when she eats, she refuses to use a knife. She aggressively tears her bread with her hands instead of cutting it, because a knife is a weapon, but tearing is immediate and safe.
Wow, that detail.
Right. And she consumes her food with this violent, rushed efficiency, as if the meal could be interrupted at any absolute second and taken away from her.
That paints such a clear picture of an environment where you are constantly bracing for impact.
Constantly.
But there's one moment with the grandmother that really stands out, a moment that involves the mother's tablecloth.
Yes. On a random, seemingly normal Sunday, Grandmother Luce does something entirely out of character. She stops her frantic eating.
Just freezes.
She reaches out and presses her bare palm completely flat against the ancient fabric of the tablecloth. She closes her eyes, and her mouth starts moving rapidly, forming these silent, untranslatable words.
Like she's praying.
But she isn't praying to the room. She is communicating directly with the fabric. She is receiving a message too old for found, using her physical hand as an antenna to the past.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because the heavy silence in this house is eventually shattered.
Yes, it all breaks open.
And the catalyst for that eruption is a box. Solenne is 12 years old. She is alone in the house on a Wednesday afternoon, just digging through a high armoire looking for a misplaced red scarf.
Just a normal afternoon.
Right. But tucked away on the highest shelf Hidden deliberately behind stacks of lavender-scented linens, she finds an old shoebox from Paris,
A container that, ironically, had traveled further than anyone currently living in the house.
which makes it so strange that she finds it hidden away like contraband. When 12-year-old Celine opens this shoebox, what exactly does she find inside?
She doesn't find shoes. She finds a thick stack of photographs.
Yeah.
And buried at the very bottom of the stack are 3 specific, terrifyingly mundane photos dated 1936, taken in a place called Zolki.
Zoki.
Yes. The first photo captures a woman in the middle of turning her face sharply away from the camera lens. She's caught in transition, actively refusing to be fully documented.
It's a refusal to let the camera have jurisdiction over her identity.
Exactly.
What about the second photo?
The second photo is of a family gathering in a courtyard. There's a man with a dark mustache standing at the head of a long table, caught mid-toast. His mouth is forming a long, open vowel.
A toast like saying cheers?
Yes, specifically l'shem, the traditional Jewish toast, which literally translates to life.
To life.
You can almost hear the joyful sound he's making. But then we arrive at the third photograph.
Yeah.
And the third photograph is the one that completely breaks the timeline for Celine.
This is the photo of the empty courtyard.
Right. It's the exact same courtyard, the exact same table from the previous photo, but now it is completely abandoned.
Just suddenly empty.
The chairs are overturned on the cobblestones. One chair is lying on its side like an animal that just gave up. But the most chilling detail is the food on the table. The stew in the bowls is still steaming.
You mentioned the concept of thermodynamics when looking at this specific photo earlier. How does a physics concept apply to a family photograph?
Well, think about what thermodynamics actually is.
Wow.
It's a branch of physics that deals with heat and temperature, specifically how heat transfers or dissipates into the air over time.
Right.
If a bowl of hot stew is sitting on a table outdoors, it takes a very specific, measurable amount of time for that heat to escape and for the steam to stop rising.
It's just a scientific fact.
Exactly. So if we apply that logic of thermodynamic to trauma, this photograph is the ultimate devastating testimony.
Because the steam proves the speed of the violence.
Yes. The time between life, between a family sitting together, raising a glass to life, and total annihilation was so brutally brief that a bowl of stew didn't even have time to cool down.
That's horrifying.
The laws of thermodynamics don't care about human atrocities or politics. They just measure heat loss. And that captured steam proves a sudden, violent, unimaginable interruption.
It's an interruption that Celine's family has been hiding in plain sight for her entire life.
Yes, literally built into the house.
And this becomes incredibly clear years later. Celine is 17 now, returning home from studying in Paris. She walks through the front door and suddenly notices something she has walked past 10,000 times without seeing.
A classic moment of finally seeing what's always been there.
Exactly. She looks at the wooden frame of the kitchen door. What does she finally notice?
She sees a mezuzah that has been painted over to blend perfectly into the wood of the doorframe.
Let's explain that a bit.
For those who might not know, a mezuzah is a small case containing a piece of parchment inscribed with specific Hebrew verses from the Torah. It's traditionally fixed to the doorframes of Jewish homes as a profound sign of faith, protection, and identity.
So they painted over it. They completely disguised it.
This raises an important question about camouflage as a long-term survival tactic.
It does.
This family took their most sacred marker of identity and hid it by painting it the exact color of the secular woodwork. They erased their true name, their original language, and their religion just to survive in a new country.
But they didn't entirely abandon their rituals.
No, they didn't. They simply displaced them.
How do you mean displace them?
They took their Friday evening Sabbath, the traditional lighting of candles and the covering of the shans the bread, and they disguised it as a mundane French Sunday family dinner.
They shifted it to Sunday.
Right. They hid the sacred inside the secular. They shifted their holy day to match the dominant culture, hiding their survival inside a new calendar.
Which brings us to the ultimate truth of that translucent Sunday cloth.
Yes.
Because standing right there in the kitchen, confronted by the painted-over mezuzah, Celine's mother finally speaks the unspeakable. She cracks the silence.
She tells her everything.
Who does she reveal Grandmother Luce actually is?
She reveals that Grandmother Luce's real name isn't Luce at all. It is Leah. Leah Horowitz.
Leah.
She was the youngest of 5 children living in that courtyard in Zolkiu, Poland. When the violent interruption happened, when the chairs were overturned and the steam was still rising, the family was taken.
But Leah wasn't.
No. 7-year-old Leah was sent away by her parents, Rivka and Lazar, into the forest to survive.
And this revelation completely changes the reality of the mother's Sunday ritual.
It changes everything about that house.
Right. If the table in the photograph was abandoned and the tablecloth was left behind, what has the mother been snapping open in the air every Sunday?
The Sunday tablecloth was never a tablecloth.
Unbelievable.
What Leah carried across borders, what she kept folded in her bag, what was washed 10,000 times until it became a collaboration with emptiness, was the bedcloth.
The bedcloth.
It was the bedsheet where her parents, Rivka and Lazar, slept. More importantly, it was the birth cloth. It was the very sheet where all 5 of their children, including Leah, were born into the world.
That is just staggering.
Her mother handed her 7-year-old daughter the most intimate item in their entire house. She told her to sleep in it, to wrap herself in it, so that wherever she was forced to hide in the world, the family would always hold her from below.
They couldn't be there, but the cloth could.
Exactly. The public table was taken from them, but the private intimacy of the bedcloth survived. It was the surface that received the children into the world, and it was now tasked with carrying the last surviving child out of it.
But the birth cloth wasn't the only thing 7-year-old Leah was sent into the dark with, was it? There was also a piece of clothing.
Yes. In those frantic final seconds, Leah's older sister Paige, who was 19 years old, took off her own heavy brown winter coat and put it on her 7-year-old sister.
A 19-year-old's coat on a 7-year-old.
The coat was massive on her. It swallowed her small frame entirely. But her mother looked at her and said, "You will grow into it."
You will grow into it. The sheer weight of that sentence.
The radical faith required in that moment is almost impossible to comprehend.
Truly impossible.
To look at your 7-year-old child, knowing that your entire world is about to be violently erased, and to wrap her in a coat that is a dozen years too big. By doing that, the mother and sister were asserting, with desperate, defiant faith, that Leah would have a future to grow into. Putting a child in an oversized coat is wrapping them in the years you are trusting they will get to live.
And she did live.
She did.
Leah grew into the coat, and eventually she grew out of it. She became loose, she moved to Sainte-Mère, and she had a daughter, Elodie.
Yes.
And Elodie had 2 daughters, Solenne, our narrator, and an older sister named Celeste.
Right, Celeste.
So we have Solenne, who is absorbing all of this history and eventually uncovers the box. But how does Celeste handle growing up in this same heavy weather?
Celeste represents a completely different but equally common reaction to inheriting massive generational trauma. She decides to reject the backward-looking gaze entirely.
She goes the other way.
She moves away to Lyon to study economics and insurance.
So she's basically looking at this heavy, unspoken generational trauma and deciding to simply opt out.
Pretty much.
She's saying, I am not my family's past. I think a lot of listeners can relate to that urge to just pack up and become someone new, to shed the weight of where you come from.
Precisely. And she uses the specific language of economics to do it. Economics treats the past as a sunk cost.
A sunk cost, right?
An expenditure that has already occurred, cannot be recovered, and therefore should not dictate your future decisions.
Wow. That's very clinical.
And furthermore, she studies insurance, a field entirely dedicated to quantifying the future and optimizing probabilities. Celeste explicitly refuses to carry the birth cloth.
She wants nothing to do with it.
She refuses to live in the already and aggressively chooses to live in the not yet.
So what does this all mean? We have 2 sisters looking at the exact same history.
Same history, 2 reactions.
Solenne studies literature and testimony. She digs into the trauma and literally inherits the cloth. Celeste studies economics and says, someone has to be the river that goes right. Someone has to live forward.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the text brilliantly synthesizes that both of these perspectives are absolutely necessary for a bloodline to survive.
They both matter.
Celeste says it beautifully during an argument with her sister. They're just different shapes of the exact same love.
Different shapes of the same love.
Solenne carries the backward thing, the cloth that remembers where they came from. Celeste carries the forward thing, the oversized coat, the mandate to grow, to live, and to leave the ruins behind.
The cloth on the coat?
The cloth outlasts the fragile human body, but the coat moves with the body. A surviving family requires both.
Which leads to Solenne's ultimate physical journey. After her mother, Elodie, passes away, Solenne takes the birth cloth, packs it in her bag, and travels back to Zolkyu.
Which is now Zolfka in Ukraine.
Right. She uses the photographs from the shoebox to navigate the streets. What does she do when she finally finds the courtyard?
She finds the exact spot, The same cobblestones, the same angle of light bouncing up from the ground that was captured in 1936.
The exact same place.
And there, in the empty space where the long table used to stand, she unpacks her bag. She unfolds the birth cloth. She holds it by the corners, lets it float in the air one last time, and lets it settle onto the hard stones.
Just like her mother did on the table.
Exactly. And then she got something extraordinary. She lies down on top of it.
She lies down on the stones in the middle of the courtyard.
She presses her living body against the translucent fabric, pressing the fabric directly into the stones of her ancestors.
Wow.
By becoming horizontal, which is the universal human posture of sleep, of birth, and of death, she transforms herself into a physical bridge.
A bridge.
She closes her eyes, and she simply listens. And what she hears in that courtyard isn't just silence, it's a fabric of time. She connects her own living, beating warmth to the residual, historical warmth of the family she never met, but whose weather she has breathed her entire life.
She becomes the literal link between the dead and the living. It gives me chills just thinking about the image of her lying there.
It's incredibly powerful.
And it brings us to this massive takeaway for you listening right now. When we think about identity, we usually think about genetics.
We do.
We think about the funny stories our parents told us around the dinner table or the recipes passed down. But this text reminds us that identity is also built from the materials of what happened, what was whispered behind closed doors, and crucially, what was deliberately left unsaid by the people who came before you.
You are formed just as much by the silences you inherit as you are by the stories you were told.
Which brings us to a final, lingering thought we want you to mull over today. Think about Solenne's realization regarding the physical structure of a cloth.
A piece of fabric is just a collaboration between thread and emptiness.
Right. And the emptiness is doing the heavy lifting. The gaps in the weave are what allow the fabric to breathe, to drape over a table, to actually function as a cloth instead of a rigid board.
We so often define our own lives by our tangible threads.
Our spoken memories.
We define ourselves by our careers, our spoken memories, our physical traits. But what if the strongest part of your identity is actually the negative space?
Yeah. What if the silences you've inherited, the things your family completely avoided talking about, or the emotional spaces they purposely left empty, are actually the very things holding your fabric together?
It completely changes the way you view your own history.
Take a look around your own home today. Look at the ordinary objects you've kept over the years, the things passed down to you in a box or left behind in an armoire.
A chipped ceramic mug.
A tarnished piece of jewelry, a folded blanket on the back of a couch. What unspoken weather are those objects holding? Whose warmth might you still be carrying without even realizing it?
It makes you wonder what your own everyday objects will whisper to the people who come after you.
It really does. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep looking at the spaces between the threads.